There is something unshakable about a person who knows who they are. Not in a loud or flashy way, but in a way that fills the space around them with certainty. When you walk into a room grounded in your truth, you don't need to announce it. People feel it. Some are drawn to it, others are unsettled by it, but it always shifts something in the atmosphere. The power of your presence doesn't come from what you say, it comes from what you embody. Peace, strength, clarity. Those qualities speak louder than any words ever could. When you walk into a space without needing to dominate or prove, your very being becomes a statement, one that says, I know who I am, and I don't need you to agree with it. There are people whose inner turmoil makes them uncomfortable in the presence of someone who is calm, not because you've done anything wrong, but because your stillness reflects back everything they haven't made peace with. And in those moments, the demons in them, the fear, the insecurity, the rage, start to surface. Not because you triggered them, but because your energy made it impossible to hide. This is why silence can be so powerful. It doesn't provoke, it reveals. It creates a mirror where people must face themselves. When you don't react, when you don't defend, when you simply remain rooted in your truth, it unsettles the energy of manipulation, of control, of chaos. They expected a fight. Instead, they're left with the sound of their own noise. You don't need to meet darkness with darkness. You don't need to raise your voice to match theirs. The most powerful people are often the quietest in the room, not because they're passive, but because their power doesn't require performance. It radiates, it holds, it protects. And most of all, it doesn't waver in the presence of disruption. Your presence becomes power when it is grounded in self-awareness. When you've done the work to heal, to reflect, to forgive, and to grow, your very existence begins to carry that work with you. People feel your boundaries before you speak them. They sense your peace before you explain it. And they know your strength, not because you flex it, but because you don't need to. There will be moments when others try to pull you out of that calm, when they poke, provoke, or push just to get a reaction. But when you know the weight your presence carries, you stop giving away your energy to prove anything. You let your stillness be the response. You let your composure speak the language they cannot twist. The energy you bring into a room can silence chaos without a single word. It can disarm tension, unsettle manipulation, and expose dishonesty. Not through confrontation, but through quiet, steady embodiment. That is what it means to carry power that doesn't need a voice to be heard. There's a certain kind of storm that only grows stronger when it's fed. When someone is agitated, lashing out, or trying to provoke, what they often want is a reaction. They want your energy, your anger, your confusion, because those things give them control. But when you meet their chaos with stillness, you interrupt the entire rhythm of that storm. Stillness isn't silence born of fear. It's strength wrapped in peace. It's choosing to stay rooted when everything around you is spinning. It's hearing the words meant to rattle you and deciding not to absorb them. That kind of calm presence makes it impossible for chaos to thrive, because it depends on your participation to survive. When someone twists your words, raises their voice, or brings in drama, they're testing your boundaries. They want to see if you'll lose yourself in their storm. But when you remain still, you create a new environment. One where you control the tempo, not them. Your stillness says, I will not dance to your chaos. Remaining calm isn't always easy. It takes discipline to pause, breathe, and not let your nervous system respond automatically. But that pause is powerful. It's in that space between stimulus and response that you reclaim yourself. You remind your body that you're safe, your mind that you're in control, and your heart that not everything deserves access to it. People who are used to controlling conversations through emotional intensity don't know what to do when their fire doesn't catch. They may escalate, get louder, or try different tactics. But the moment they realize their flames can't ignite anything in you, the dynamic begins to shift. Stillness removes the oxygen from the fire. It starves it. That doesn't mean you're ignoring what's happening. It means you're responding from a higher place, a place where peace is more important than power, and presence is more valuable than performance. You're not avoiding the conflict. You're choosing not to let it define you. That is a form of leadership most people don't recognize, but they feel it deeply. Stillness is a mirror. It reflects back to the other person the full weight of their behavior without you having to say a word. It forces them to face their own discomfort without you becoming part of it. And while they may not always admit it, they sense the strength it takes to remain calm when you take the air out of their fire, not by fighting, but by refusing to burn with them. You offer no fuel, no validation, no chaos in return. And in doing so, you shift the power back to yourself, quietly, peacefully, and completely. There is a part of you that must remain untouched by the noise of the world, a place inside that belongs to you and only you. It's where your peace lives, your clarity, your knowing, your truth. And that place is sacred, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. It's the deepest part of you, and it deserves your highest protection. When you move through life without guarding your peace, you give people too much access to your energy. They pull you into their chaos, they shift your mood, they distort your focus. But when your peace becomes sacred ground, you stop letting everyone walk through it with muddy feet. You become more intentional about what you allow in and what you keep out. Protecting your peace is not about isolation. It's about discernment. You learn the difference between what deserves your attention and what only wants to drain it. You stop answering every call to chaos. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you, and you begin to build emotional boundaries that honor your well-being. The people who benefit from your lack of boundaries may resist when you start protecting yourself. They may call it selfish, cold, or distant. But protecting your peace is not about pleasing others. It's about preserving yourself. And you begin to realize that not everyone deserves front row access to your heart, your time, or your energy. You learn to walk away without guilt, to say no without a second thought, to end conversations that are designed to rob you of your balance, because your peace is no longer up for negotiation. It is something you fought for, something you healed for, and something you now refuse to lose again for the sake of someone else's comfort. There will be moments when people try to provoke you just to get a piece of your energy, when they twist your words, press your buttons, or test your limits. But when your peace is sacred, you meet their disturbance with distance. You don't have to prove you're calm. You just protect it fiercely and without apology. End of section. The more you protect your peace, the more you notice how many things used to distract or disturb you. What once pulled you into anxiety now barely moves you. What once stole your time now doesn't even catch your attention. That is the power of treating your inner life like something holy, because it is. When your peace is sacred, you don't just survive, you begin to thrive. You create space to grow, to heal, to dream. You give yourself room to breathe. And while the world may still be loud, chaotic, and demanding, your spirit stays grounded, unshaken, untouched, protected. You don't have to call out someone's darkness to reveal it. All you have to do is stand in your light. When you show up with honesty, when you speak from love, when you live with integrity, those who operate from manipulation, ego, or fear begin to feel exposed, not because you're attacking them, but because your presence contrasts what they're trying to conceal. Your truth makes others uncomfortable when they've built their lives around denial. The way you choose openness in a world that rewards deception creates a quiet pressure for people to face themselves. And not everyone is ready for that reflection. Some will retreat, some will lash out. But the light you carry will keep shining regardless of their response. You don't have to dim your light to make others comfortable. That is not your burden to carry. The discomfort they feel is not a reflection of you. It's a signal that their shadows are being touched by something true. And truth, even when it's silent, speaks volumes in the presence of lies. When you walk into a space full of unspoken tension or buried resentment, and you carry peace and openness, you shift the atmosphere. You become a mirror. You reveal what's hidden simply by being real. You don't need to expose anyone with accusations. Their reactions to your presence will tell you everything you need to know. Your light is your wholeness. It's your healed heart, your self-awareness, your compassion. And that kind of light doesn't just brighten a room, it changes the frequency of it. Darkness cannot survive in its presence. So those who rely on secrets, confusion, or control will try to either extinguish it or flee from it. You're not responsible for how others respond to your growth. Some will be inspired, some will feel threatened. Some will try to challenge you, not because you've done something wrong, but because your light makes their unresolved pain harder to ignore. Keep shining, keep showing up whole. You don't owe anyone a smaller version of yourself. You may notice how your presence brings things to the surface, unspoken truths, hidden insecurities, unresolved wounds. Don't mistake that for conflict. It's clarity. You didn't create the tension. You simply revealed what was already there. And in doing so, you invite healing, not by force, but by example. Being who you are, honest, whole, loving, is enough to shift every room you enter. You don't have to argue. You don't have to fight. Your energy speaks. Your integrity speaks. Your light speaks. And when it does, anything not aligned with it becomes visible. Not through judgment, but through truth. There comes a moment when you realize that not every situation requires your energy. Not every conflict deserves your response. Not every person is ready to receive the love you're capable of giving. And in those moments, you don't have to raise your voice or shut your heart. You simply redirect your attention gently but firmly. Withdrawing your attention is not an act of cruelty. It's an act of clarity. You begin to understand that where you placed your presence, you place your power. And when that presence is no longer being honored, respected, or held with care, you have every right to pull it back, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. There is a difference between abandoning someone and removing yourself from a situation that's become toxic. One is rooted in fear, the other in love. Walking away from a conversation that has turned manipulative doesn't mean you've stopped caring. It means you care enough about your peace to no longer entertain emotional chaos. Silence is not always a punishment. Sometimes it is the highest form of wisdom. When words are no longer being received with honesty, when your truth is being twisted or weaponized, your silence becomes a sanctuary, a space where you no longer have to defend your heart or explain your boundaries. You don't have to hate someone to choose distance. You don't have to close your heart to protect it. Love doesn't always look like staying. Sometimes it looks like leaving the space so that both hearts can breathe, reset, and maybe even heal in their own time. That's a hard kind of love, the kind that doesn't cling. People who are used to getting your attention at any cost may feel unsettled when you no longer react. They may accuse, guilt, or try to pull you back into the storm. But when your silence is rooted in clarity, it doesn't waver. It doesn't explain, it simply remains. There is so much power in knowing that you can still love someone and not allow them access to your peace. That you can care deeply and still choose space. That love does not mean tolerating pain just to keep the connection alive. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop feeding what's hurting you. To withdraw attention is not to shut down. It is to rise above. It is to hold yourself in such sacred regard that you no longer allow your energy to be drained by what dishonors your spirit. It is to remain loving without losing yourself. It is to choose peace over performance, truth over tension, and healing over harm. Integrity is the quietest strength in the room, but it is also the most unshakable. When you live in alignment with your values, when your words match your actions and your actions match your beliefs, you don't need to defend yourself in the face of accusation or manipulation. Your life begins to speak for itself. Manipulative people thrive on confusion. They twist stories, shift blame, and create drama because it gives them control. But integrity brings clarity. It stands still while chaos swirls. It doesn't need to explain itself. It doesn't chase validation. It simply is, and that is what makes it so powerful. You don't have to argue with someone who's trying to distort your truth. Let them talk, let them spin, let them try to rewrite the narrative, because your consistency over time will always rise to the surface. People may not see it immediately, but truth has a way of enduring even when lies travel fast. What unsettles deceit more than anything else is someone who refuses to play the game. When you stay calm, stay kind, and stay clear in your values, it creates a contrast. The manipulator expects you to panic, to retaliate, to unravel. But when you don't, when you let your integrity hold the line, their tactics begin to fall apart. Integrity doesn't need applause. It doesn't beg to be believed. It just keeps showing up, steady and unchanged, and eventually that consistency becomes undeniable. You stop needing to prove anything to anyone because the people who matter will see the truth in your walk, not just your words. There's a certain peace that comes when you know you've acted from a place of truth, even if others question it, even if they try to turn people against you. You rest in the fact that your heart is clean, your intentions were clear, and your choices were rooted in love, not ego. When others come with chaos, let your calm be your response. When they twist the narrative, let your integrity speak louder than your defense. Over time, that quiet strength will wear down even the loudest deception. It doesn't need force, it just needs patience. And while manipulation may win temporary ground, it cannot stand the test of consistency, because integrity always returns to the surface. Always. Not through shouting, not through conflict, but through the simple, steady presence of someone who never had to become loud to be true. There will be times when someone tries to pull you into their emotional storm. Their words are sharp, their energy is loud, and their intention is to provoke a reaction. But just because the storm is swirling around you doesn't mean you have to step into it. You have the choice to stay in your center. Your center is your power. It's where your peace lives, your wisdom waits, and your truth resides. It's the space within you that doesn't flinch when someone else is losing control. The louder their chaos becomes, the deeper you breathe, the more you ground yourself in what is steady and true. Entering their storm may feel like standing up for yourself, but often it only leads to more confusion. When you match their energy, you give them what they want, your emotional presence in their chaos. But when you stay calm, you show them their storm has no hold over you. Staying in your center doesn't mean you ignore what's happening. It means you respond instead of react. You observe instead of absorb. You let their noise pass like thunder in the distance, refusing to let it shake the ground you stand on. That grounded presence speaks louder than any defense ever could. People who live in conflict expect others to join them there. They're looking for a fight, a response, anything to justify their behavior. But when you stay in your center, you don't feed the fire. You don't entertain the dysfunction. You remain still, not because you're weak, but because you know your strength doesn't live in chaos. It takes discipline to stay centered, to not rise to the bait, to resist the urge to prove or explain. But each time you choose stillness over struggle, you strengthen your emotional boundaries. You send a message, not just to them, but to yourself, that your peace is non-negotiable. Staying centered is an act of deep self-respect. It's telling yourself that your inner world matters more than someone else's drama, that your energy is too valuable to be spent on temporary storms, that you don't have to enter every conflict just because you were invited, And the more you root yourself in calm, the more storms begin to pass without shaking you. You become a steady presence in a world that often thrives on reaction. And that steadiness isn't just for them, it's for you. A way to stay whole, clear, and connected to who you truly are, no matter what surrounds you. You can love people deeply and still understand that it's not your job to fix them. Healing is an inside job. Growth is a personal choice. And no matter how much you care, you can't force someone to face what they're not ready to confront. You can only keep doing your own work and let your journey speak for itself. Sometimes your progress becomes a mirror for someone else's pain. Your calm highlights their chaos. Your clarity reveals their confusion. Your emotional boundaries shine a light on where they have none. And for some, that reflection is too much. Instead of facing it, they project. They blame, they attack. Their reaction isn't really about you. It's about what your growth triggers in them. When someone hasn't made peace with their own wounds, your healing can feel like a threat, not because you've done something wrong, but because you've chosen to rise. And that rise unsettles what they've been trying to avoid. You may feel tempted to shrink, to dim, to soften your edges just to avoid their discomfort, but you were not put here to abandon yourself for someone else's approval. Your healing is not arrogance. Your peace is not provocation. It's your truth, and you're allowed to live in it fully. Trying to fix someone who doesn't want to be fixed will only drain you. It will make you question your worth, doubt your path, and carry guilt that doesn't belong to you. You're not a savior. You're a soul on a journey, just like them. And the most loving thing you can do is let people meet themselves in their own time. Not everyone is ready to be seen. Not everyone wants their patterns exposed, even gently, and that's okay. You're not here to force revelation. You're here to embody it. The work you've done is yours. The wisdom you've earned belongs to you. And whether they embrace it or resist it, you keep walking. There is power in letting go of the need to rescue. It frees you to show up in relationships without the heavy burden of responsibility for someone else's growth. It allows you to stay compassionate without becoming consumed. And it protects your own healing from becoming a battleground. You don't have to stop loving them. You don't have to stop hoping for their transformation. But you do have to release the illusion that you can make it happen for them. You keep shining. You keep healing. You keep becoming. And if they're meant to meet you in that light, they will, when they're ready.